Well, it's great to be here. The last part of my real estate, direct real estate career, I don't suggest anybody try to duplicate that, make a lot of bad loans, and then take over for trying to get rid of them with a special assets group. But what I thought we'd do today is go through a little bit about what Blackwood does, some of the companies we have holdings in. I'll just touch on them briefly, and then given that this is really a real estate concentrated group, I'll talk about 3 projects we're involved in, which I think you'll find fairly fascinating. We are a multidisciplined private equity group. What do I mean by that? The nature of our business is not solely real estate. There are private equity firms out there that's all they do, but we have interests in everything from one of the state-of-the-art software for companies that the Department of Defense uses, to a gluten-free, carb-free bread company, which is in Sanford, Connecticut, or Sanford, Florida, and is being launched. Some of our partners, the disciplines we have with our partners range from the former president of Credit Suisse, he's a lawyer, former head of currency trading in London for Solomon. We have partners that have got DOD and intelligence experience, and my background is as a CPA, and having been involved in mergers and acquisitions and real estate. So I'm more of the numbers guy, and I spend a lot of time, unfortunately, looking at spreadsheets and making sure that we're doing things correctly. So what I want to do is I'll talk just briefly about some of these companies. ATS is a firm that has got what they consider to be the best software in the world for the Department of Defense. What does it do? ATS stands for Applied Training Solutions. And it has the lowest cost provider of disaster situational software. It's got a lot of simulation in it. But they can simulate a hurricane, a Cat 5, coming into Miami. And they can do various simulations with millions of pieces of data and instantly get the results, i.e. this street is going to be blocked, this hospital is going to be underwater, you need to move to here if this was to happen. You need to be ready for that. How did we get into the business? There was a private firm in 2008 that was going bankrupt. They had a software called RDAC, which stands for Rapid Data Availability, et cetera, et cetera. What does that software do? That software will allow millions of pieces of information to come together and give various assessments. Those assessments are as detailed as the following. A Secret Service, or let's use Special Forces, is on the ground in a hot zone. This software can take millions of pieces of information and tell him to turn left, don't turn right. And that information is put together, and the compression software related to it is the best in the world. So all of those bits of data are compressed in a way that it looks like it's less than a phone call coming through. Very critical in certain types of operations. Biostat, I've got samples, and I'll pass these along to the group, and I'd want these back. But this is considered the world's best hemostatic agent. We have the sole rights to the distribution of this product in North America, Nigeria, Pakistan, Brazil, and there's a couple smaller countries. We got involved in it quite frankly, we were looking to buy the company. Products manufactured in England, and again, is considered the best in the world. The product that this gentleman's holding will stop an arterial bleed in under a minute without compression. The next closest product that is manufactured is 3 minutes with compression. The next round of the product coming out will be called Celox Extreme, and that will stop a bleed in seconds, no longer a minute. That's the difference of life and death, not only in a military application, which is obvious in a firefight, but police and emergency medical. The Orange County Sheriff's Department now carries the product, and it has been attributed to saving the life of one young man who was shot in Orange County. The Orlando Police Department carries it, and the University of Central Florida has it in their emergency tactical people there. In my opinion, I have it in all my cars. All my motorcycles have this product on it. I don't think anyone ultimately should be walking around without it in some form or fashion. And our next penetration after the military, agencies, and police and EMS is going to be into the public sector. We also see it in industrial. When you look at industrial accidents in the elevator business, believe it or not, the biggest accident that they have the most often are deep lacerations. It's an ideal candidate for that. If you think about mining, if you think about you're out in Colorado, there's certain areas out there that if somebody has a car accident, they can't get to that person's going to bleed out. Well, if that person's an organ donor, if they bleed out, those organs are no good. Even if they were brain dead, if they had this product before they bled out, those organs are still good and then can be recovered. So we're very excited about the product, and we see this as being a $100 million business in 5 years. We've taken it from no sales in the U.S. to $3 million this year. We're going to triple that to close to $11 million, plus or minus. Next year, we've got some very big orders coming in from Nigeria, and I just found out about that today. That's why I was on a call in Great Britain at 4 a.m. this morning. Biostat Research is the research arm of Biostat. We have two products there. Curate is one. The Marine Corps was looking for a product to cure bug bites. It's a big problem in some of the places that they're stationed. The only product that was available to them had papain in it. Papain, if you're allergic, will kill you. So the FDA said no product can have papain in it in the United States. Our Biostat Research Group developed that product, and our first order is going into the military. We're talking with Walgreens now and expect that those sales will be public and commercialized within the next several years. Smart baking, I mentioned that to you. If you know or heard about anything with gluten, gluten intolerance appears to be growing. Certainly people looking to control their carbohydrates is growing, and the thoughts about wheat in general as it's been modified in the U.S., what we have today considered wheat compared to what it was 100 years ago, increases your blood sugar, does a lot of things that is not necessarily good to you. One of the cancers I had, which is throat cancer or thyroid cancer, I had mine taken out. There's a book out that says that they attribute this Hashimoto's disease, which I had, they attribute it directly to wheat and the type of wheat that we're eating today. This bread has no wheat, no net carbs, high in omega-3s, gluten-free, and it actually tastes good. Most of the gluten-free stuff tastes like cardboard. So this product is ready to be launched, and we're real excited about that. And then DAVGAR is a fund that we've created with Manny Garcia out of Central Florida. He was former sat on the board of Burger King, had I think close to 100 Burger Kings at one time, owned Manuel's, which was the best restaurant in downtown Orlando. He's started a new concept called City Fire, which he's got 3 of that are doing very, very well, has franchised 1, and we've just negotiated the Florida Development Agreement with Wahlburgers to develop the Wahlburgers in Florida. That's Donnie and Mark and his brother Paul. It's their chain. His brother Paul is evidently a great chef. They've got 3 of these. Third one's opening up in Boston. They've got one up in Canada, and they're doing $4 or $5 million a year. So the restaurants are doing really well. So that's a little bit about who we are and what we do. I'll get in, like I said, I'll get into the real estate a little later, but we like the ability to be multiple disciplined and we all bring certain things to the table, so our conversations about deals and values are quite unique. As we get into real estate, there's a couple things, and I mentioned it earlier to some people here, that if you're involved in real estate and don't have a lot of experience in it, there's several key things that if you remember can probably keep you out of trouble in a lot of ways. And when you don't remember it, and I'm a testament to this, you can get in trouble. And one is real estate profits are usually made on the buy side, not on the sell side. Buying a product, buying the project right is very, very critical. That means being very disciplined in your approach, in your analysis of a deal, and in the market. Lastly, land has no value. Intrinsically has no value. It is only what you can do with land that creates the value. And often people forget that to their own demise. And I've got a little example of a deal that we spent a little too much time on, because even after 30 years of real estate experience, I still fall in love with real estate when I go see it. And this was a beautiful piece of property. So the project that I'm speaking about is the Lake Orlando project. It's a significant sized lake, as you can see. The golf course failed. The course is 130 acres, 6 miles from downtown Orlando on 441. It is 3.5 miles from the heart of College Park, one of the highest price areas in Orlando. It is 5.5 miles to the main hospital of Florida Hospital. That area is growing significantly. Job formation around it is growing, and the property is stunning. The golf course was developed in 1971, so the trees are mature. The views are absolutely incredible. And believe it or not, there are only 7 lakefront restaurants in Central Florida. That's it. So we looked at this piece of property, and I fell in love with it. The first time I had been told about this area of town, and I saw it was when I first moved to Orlando 14 years ago. So when the owner who had bought the failed golf course came to me and said, I've got this great project in the Rosemont area of Orlando, I said, I don't want to see it. I know Rosemont. I have no interest in going there. So he came back 2 more times. He was somewhat persistent. And on a Friday, he said, come on, let's go out and we'll go take a look at this dirt. Well, I got out there and did the tour, and I just said, this is unbelievable. In 6 miles from the heart of downtown. We can't miss on this. And by the way, my purchase price on this, I put it under contract at $1.5 million. So we're at approximately $11,000 an acre for the land. The density, we could get we planned it for 660 units, multifamily, single family, townhouse, and a restaurant and a park on the lake. There used to be a restaurant here, it burned down. By rights, we could do 1,350 units. So we were going to save the trees, we were going to have walking paths, running paths, probably a canoe area, all of that great stuff. Well, they had a very, very active homeowners association for the Lake Orlando community. And they were adamant that they wanted their golf course. Now, they wanted somebody else to pay for it, but they wanted their golf course. So we worked closely with them and just tried to convince them that that golf course will never be a golf course again. Golf courses are failing all over Florida at a very fast rate, and those that are centered around a community, unless it's a Islesworth or that type of a community, are failing very quickly. What happens to a community when these golf courses fail is very, very tragic. A place like this, you'll see transients soon. You'll start to see coyotes. You'll start to see snake and rat infestations, and it goes on, and then it gets overgrown. And the impact on those homes that used to be on the course are dramatic. The impact on the outer areas are also very, very significant. So it's a big problem. But going back to what I fell in love with was that dirt and how beautiful the area was. Once I started getting into the numbers, I needed $1.40 a foot in my rents to make this deal work for several reasons. Part, we had unstable soil conditions there. It's by a lake. It was a bit of a mess. We did a little bit of analysis on that, enough to tell us that it was a bit of a problem. The closest rents, once we got into the rents in the area, there were 85 cents a foot. So we would have to move the rents by 60 cents a foot on the lake to do anything with this asset. The single family, the prices there, although they were going up, and there was a lot of pride of ownership around the houses around the lake, they were still selling at under replacement cost. So it would be very, very challenging for us to compete. And then the absorption on these was also going to be a question because of how pricey it was and the fact that you didn't have real street frontage there. Now, we felt really good that because there were no lakefront restaurants in the area, we could make that work, the restaurant. But when you really got into 600 units of multifamily and some townhouses and some single family and the absorptions we could expect, at the end of the day, I'm not sure we could make money if somebody gave us that land. So my prediction is this site, by the way, if you go on LoopNet, you'll see it on there. I suspect a year from now, you're going to see this site on LoopNet. And at some point, something will get done with it, something that this community doesn't want, that won't be very, very attractive. But between now and then, there's going to be a lot of pain on it. That goes back to what I said. Land has no intrinsic value. It's what you can do with it. And in this case, where the rents were and where home prices are, even though $11,000 an acre sounds fantastic, it doesn't work here. The Tabby House. One of I mentioned before, maybe I didn't mention here, but one of the mottos of our company, and we truly follow this, is we do well by doing good. That's one of the reasons why we're into the ATS product, because it trains our first responders, it trains our military in a very tough environment, and it makes them the best at what they do. We also like real estate where we're helping the municipalities achieve something they want to get done. And no margin, no mission. We're in it to make some money. But we want to do something that's pretty special, usually something that's iconic in some degree, and something we can be proud of. The Tabby House this is in New Smyrna Beach. And this was an interesting project when you look at structure. The city agreed to contribute all of the cost of the infrastructure that was needed to create the pads. So our group bought the land, the city is contributing all of the infrastructure. That means they're into this deal by almost as much as we are. The developer of the project isn't putting any money in, but is bringing his talent to the table. We've structured our equity as first mortgage debt, which we got the city to agree that they would allow that. That means we're priming the city's $350,000 that they're putting for infrastructure and some other things they're doing. It's a relatively small deal, but it's 17 townhouse lots. We could see a 2/3 reduction in the projected sale of those lots and still get out of it. So we get an 8% coupon on our mortgage, plus we get 30% of the deal. It ends up being a very nice deal, and we have a partner in the city, which I like. My experience in the City View project certainly showed me that when you have a city that's got a lot of money in your project, they're usually on your side. The next project is called City Center, and I'm not going to name the city because we are in negotiations right now on a CRA overlay for this particular area. Does anyone or everyone know what a CRA is? All right, CRA stands for Community Reinvestment Area. And it was originally structured to try to bring money into blighted areas or areas that are getting worn down. But the legislation in Florida is such, the way they created it, virtually any downtown can put a CRA overlay in it. Why do they do that? If before the counties got smart, when that overlay came in, that meant the city got to keep the county's money, the increase in the taxes based on investments they're putting into that area. So if you look at the City View project, the tax base was about $20,000 on that entire site. The taxes are over $1 million, county and city, every year after we built the City View project. That's a nice difference. The city of Orlando keeps all of that. Counties don't like that. So this project has a 21 mils per thousand here. This particular county has said they will not approve any more CRAs that would take the county's money. That doesn't mean the city can't put a CRA overlay on it and therefore allow that to still happen. Why would they do that? They're going to get all that money anyway. Well, I'll show you why. This particular project, we helped the city over a 2-year period assemble the land. If the city was trying to buy it, they would, most likely what would happen is an individual would say, no way, I'm not selling that property, or I want 3 times what it's worth. So through us, we acquired the property as a theoretical developer. We then provided that land to the city. We got reimbursed for what our costs were. And now the city owns the land free and clear in a trust. Now they can figure out what they want to do with this land. This particular project will be the new city center of an area of South Florida that was really a bedroom community. So, you know, single family homes, condos, lots of road traffic, and no what I call, there's no there. You know, where is the downtown? Where is the heart of this community? There is none. So what we will be doing with this project is the following. We will be developing at least 800 units that will have a combination of multifamily, retail, hotel, could be some office, but not much because of the nature of this community, structured parking on both sides, a small park with an amphitheater, so it now becomes the anchor of the community. Now, how are we going to finance that? Well, we've got the city to agree to several things. One, they're going to create a community development district, which is different than a CRA. Community Development District, CDD, can issue bonds. This particular municipality has a very, very strong credit rating. So we can finance infrastructure. We can finance road improvements. We can finance with the CDD anything that is considered public. We could actually value the land underneath those improvements and put that in the pot, and that money comes to the project. But all of you know that commercial real estate is sold on a cap rate, right? So all of a sudden, that's great, we've gotten all this money, but our project, which we ultimately have to sell, now has a community development district assessment on that tax bill every year, which does what? Increases the operating expenses of those projects and hurts our value from a cap rate perspective. So therein comes in the CRA. The city, right now, the property has a 0 tax base to the city. So if we create 800,000 square feet, let's assume $200 a foot times 85% for coming up with a tax value, you've gone from 0 to about $1.8 million in taxes. The city now then can share that increment with us, the developer. So I'm negotiating now a 50% sharing of those increment dollars. What that will do for us is offset the CDD component. We can actually start paying it down quicker. And effectively what we've gotten are a very significant part of the structured parking for this project, which will be public, people coming in and out for the retail. But it will serve our multifamily, it will serve the hotel, it will serve the retail. We've gotten all of the infrastructure done at a very, very favorable price. because the increment's paying for it. And now we can put more money into the deal and really make it kind of that special project they want. When you have your city as your partner in doing these type of deals, mountains can be moved for you. I shared earlier that you still have to do that very respectfully with the city. You have to be sensitive to political issues and political careers. But at the end of the day, you can really achieve something pretty special. So we're really excited about this deal. My role, or our role at Blackwood, is one, we've brought two of my longest customers, which I've lent lots of money to, are very, very, very skilled developers, both on the multifamily side, one. The other is hotel and retail developers, and they're very solid. To joint venture together, the retail and hotel developer will be the master developer in this case. They will, once the pads are ready for the multifamily, they will flip that to the residential developer for building. Our role within Blackwood is really to make sure that the infrastructure, that the CRA gets structured correctly. We are responsible for negotiating the increment, how much of that we're going to get. I'm targeting 50%. If I can get more, that's great. If I can make the deal work with a little bit less and leave more for the city, we'll certainly do that. But at the end of the day, the numbers have got to work for all parties. And also to make sure that the structure of the CDD bonds that are issued are such that we have prepayment rights and other things that we need done, and incorporating that into the capital structure of this real estate deal. It ends up creating a more complicated capital structure, but the returns on it will be very, very healthy for this project. And lastly, a project that we are working on now, which we're really excited about. We've raised the initial money for it. We've got our first deals set to go with developers of single-tenant leases, and we see this as a great opportunity. And we're taking a little different tact on this real estate. And does everyone have a good sense of what a net tenant lease is? Family Dollar, CVS, theoretically a McDonald's that's not a corporate owned, or is a corporate owned, would be a net tenant lease. So one tenant in the property. That business is growing very significantly. It works for retailers because they do not, public retailers do not want to have real estate on their balance sheet. It kills their balance sheet indices, their performance ratios get out of whack, and so most of these are structured as operating leases. So you're not showing any debt, you're not showing any assets on their books. It helps their leverage levels, ratios, et cetera, et cetera. The developers of these projects have got a problem today. The typical deal with a bank still on a construction side will take 30% equity, 20 to 30% equity. So if you're doing 100 of these a year and a neighborhood, a Walmart neighborhood market is $10 million. That means every deal you got to put $3 million up. Your bankers are only going to allow so much out as it relates to financial guarantees, repayment guarantees. So all of a sudden you want to do 100 of these. You can't do them, not with your bank. So it's limiting, it's throttling your ability back significantly. But the opportunities are there. Think about this for a minute. Today's triple B minus bond is paying about 3%. If I was to say to somebody, you can buy that bond, which now you're stuck with, you've got interest rate risk, or I can put you in a product and your general debtor, because you've got, these are typically general obligation bonds, not secured, or I can put you in a piece of real estate that the tenant is triple B minus, and I can allow you a 90-day call on your money. So you can earn 8% on that money and still get out in 90 days if you want. Not a bad deal. So we're structuring a fund, we're calling it a liquidity fund, to do exactly that. We've got a group that wants to buy as much as we can give them. And the yields on this look very, very good. So we're providing 100% financing to the developer. That's great, but what else does it do to the developer? It actually allows them to do a little bit more bank financing too, because we get a performance guarantee, we get a completion guarantee, we do not get a financial guarantee. So, and we also close on the land. So this developer has now turned himself from owning this asset to being a fee developer. And by the way, he's making as much money with us as he would if he took all the risk and put this on his own balance sheet, because all the costs associated with working with a bank. Who are the buyers of this product? The typical buyer for a single tenant lease, especially the smaller ones, is the 1031 exchange market. Is everybody familiar with that? Okay. That market is very fluid and it is growing. And so one of the ways we create the liquidity mechanism that can give an 8% yield is the average life of one of the smaller deals is 6 months. You start construction, it's 4 or 5 draws, the tenant starts paying lease and they're out. Under the 1031 exchange market, we're going to have with the 1031 exchange market, we're going to have a weighted average life of these deals of approximately 3 months. So why do I say that? If you're a 1031 buyer, you don't have to wait until that asset is complete. If you like that location, you want to identify that asset, you can buy that asset at the time I close. That 1031 buyer is going to fund that land closing. Or I'll have our money out for 1 or 2 days. They'll buy it. The rest of the money goes into a qualified intermediary and they fund the draws. So from a weighted average perspective, we will have deals that we will be funding 100%. We will have deals that we might fund 1/6 of the deal. We have other deals that we will fund 1/3, 2/3. On a weighted average basis, it gives us a very, very strong yield, and it does several things for us. We're doing well by doing good. We're providing developers the money they need today to fund these deals. We give investors an 8% yield that they can get in and out of what is effectively a money market within 90 days. They have a call provision. And at the end of the day, we're making we're getting a very good scrape. And most importantly for me, we're taking very little risk. If one was to say to me, would you like to invest at a 6.5 cap on a Family Dollar store for the next 15 years, the base lease, and five-year options thereafter, I would say no way. Because I've been through interest rate cycles, I've been through collapses of real estate, I've seen Circuit City in one of our deals go bankrupt. I don't know what's going to happen with Family Dollar. I feel real good about them for the next year, maybe next 3 years. But after that, my crystal ball gets very, very cloudy. So, how long am I in these deals? I'm in the deal for 3 months, 4 months. And we end up with a better yield than the investors that are in it for the long haul. And that's okay, because they have a different profile than us. We are delivering the product that allows them to buy that cap rate. And they buy it at 6.5 with rent bumps that are averaging about a 7.5 yield over the life of the asset, if you're talking about a Family Dollar store. What's real important to us? So where are the risks to our clients? Well, there's several. If we don't buy that asset right, what I said before, if we don't buy that asset right, we're in trouble. So our program is as follows. A Family Dollar store, the market today, if you have their best lease, and their best lease today is 2% rent bumps a year, it's calculated that way, and you get it at the end, after the end of the 3rd year, and it cycles through. The second best lease is on the 15-year base term. At the end of 10 years, you get a 10% bump, and then you get bumps thereafter. The third best lease is a rent bump at the end of 15 years of 10%, and then you have rent bumps thereafter. Now, big difference in the value of those various leases. To a swing of 50 to 75 to 100 basis points when you look at their worst lease, which is really a double net lease. So knowing what we're buying is very, very important, and understanding where that market is. We're taking very little cap rate risk. When we commit to our developer that we will take the next 15 deals, we still underwrite that deal. Because I have a fiduciary responsibility to those investors that are coming into our fund. When they want to redeem their money in 90 days, I need to be in a position to allow them to redeem that money. So I can't, the only cap rate risk I can take is on a weighted average basis, that 3 to 4 months. So that's how we look at that. And for the developer, what's critically important for them is surety of execution. As an example, there's a 7-Eleven developer that was financing a number of these deals out of Belgium, I want to say. There was a fund out of Belgium, pension fund. And they shut down on them during construction. That's a big problem for a developer. Now you got to find that money, right? Banks have been known to do that. During the Asian contagion, back in 97, 98, I had to retrade people, and I didn't like it on the conduit side because of where rates went. So that can happen. In our case, we're doing several things. We're committing up front. We're saying we're going to take the next 15 or 20 of these deals, but we get to underwrite them. I'm taking the cap rate risk once I close, but we're constantly looking at cap rates, where we think they're going to go. And should there be a spike anytime before I close, we can renegotiate. After the close, it's my risk. So now the developer isn't taking that risk. But I'm okay because I'm passing that risk off very quickly to those buyers that are willing to do that. That's their market. They're comfortable with 7%. And they're happy with it. So we're delivering that for them. How do we do it? And what's the process of doing that? So let's talk about where the risks really are in this. You've got construction risk, right? If I get front-ended on this deal where the developer is taking too much money up front, or they put in a draw and they haven't done any construction. You ever hear of some of those stories with banks where they've done 6 draws for a developer and nobody's ever been on the site? That happens. So we've got to protect our investors several ways. We make sure we understand the land values. We underwrite each deal. We have an investment committee that underwrites these deals just like when I was at Bank of America. And we have to approve that. And our group that approves these are all seasoned real estate guys. What's also important to us is third-party professionals involved. The construction administration is done by what I perceive to be as one of the best construction administration people in the country. And she did all of Bank of America's work while she was with Bank of America. She left and started her own company. She's still the best. And so we will not fund a draw unless she and her company has approved this deal. And of course, the lease structures are critically important to us. So we use Lowndes Drosnick out of Orlando. They do all C&L's work. They're very, very good at what they do. And just the slightest little changes in a lease, if you're not watching it, can have a big cap rate differential. So we're very careful on what we do there. So at the end of the day, we've got 50 basis points. If a deal is worth a 6 cap rate in the market, we're going to buy it from the developer at a 650. We're protected through our construction process because we've got retainage on him, and he doesn't get his last payment until the tenant has come in place. So that's where he's getting his money. I'm giving a great return to investors, but what's critical for us is moving that product and getting it out the door. So I'm looking for a weighted average life equal to about half of what the average life is. My weighted average life on a Walmart neighborhood market might be 5 to 6 months. Their construction period's 10. You know, Family Dollar's 2.5 to 3. Their construction period's 5. 7-Eleven is a little bit more. There's also differences in what you can buy for. It's interesting. The family dollars, when you think of those, the markets they're in tertiary markets. They're in lower income markets. You look at a 7-Eleven, they're urban. The sites, the corners are usually better. But I can buy a 7-Eleven and I can make more money on that than I can on a Family Dollar or Dollar General. Why is that? The price of the Family Dollars, you buy one of those deals at $1 million, $1.1 million. That's a big slice of the 1031 market. When you start getting into the neighborhood market deals and the 7-Elevens, they're bigger deals, the community that you have to sell to becomes much smaller. And so we have a little cap rate differential there. We talked about the above market returns, the risk mitigation, and clearly for us, the liquidity is very, very important. I don't want to take a long-term risk on a deal that doesn't have really, quite frankly, any kind of rent growth built into it. The minimum credit rating we're going to pursue on a deal will probably be a triple B minus or better. And when you go back to the Family Dollar stores, their worst leases, we wouldn't even take them because we believe that there's much more volatility in cap rates with those deals. So it'll be harder for us to move. Take a look at the size of the market for this. It's $11 billion in sales. Very, very significant. We don't need a big slice of that market to do real well and to be very successful in this game. The other thing that this does for us is we've created our website called 1031 Connect. That will be a location where 1031 buyers and sellers can come to. We believe a fairly significant number of our sales, maybe up to 50%, may flow through that. And we're in the works right now becoming a qualified intermediary. Why do we want to do that? Qualified intermediary holds the deposits, right? So now you can become a big bank client pretty quickly if you have $50 million in their bank. The qualified intermediary has the right to keep all of the interest. Not a big deal today, but we get back to a normalized interest rate environment. That's a nice scrape, right? We could give half of it back to our clients, which would make us best of breed, and still be a big client for a bank, have a lot of money, have a nice scrape off of that, and it allows us to do the more complex 1031 exchanges, which are reverse exchanges and other exchanges, that the fees are very, very significant. Plain vanilla fees on a 1031 deal are very, very small. You get into the more complex ones, the fees really go up. So you combine deposits, scrape, fees, and then the warehousing and the sell-through of your own product, it ends up being a very, very nice deal. Typical stores, like I said, 7-Elevens, drugstores, discount autos. We're working on a portfolio of 5 Federal Express distribution centers. And the president of Developer Capital has been selected to analyze that lease, give recommendations on that lease, structure that lease for the developer. So they're really ours to be had. And that's triple B minus, I also believe, Federal Express. So it's very, very good paper for us. See if there's anything real interesting I can possibly share with you here. We talked about what we're doing. Here's our pipeline. We've got 43 Family Dollar stores. They're about $1.5 million a piece. We've got 6 Pet Boys. We've got Academy store. We've got 6 Federal Express distribution facilities. All that's lined up, and we've talked to very few developers right now. We have another 5 developers that want to speak to us, and we're just saying we need to back up right now. And just wait. Let's get through the first ones that we're doing. Let's get those completed, and then we'll open this up. So again, we see it as a $100 million business pretty quickly. I think we talked about lease-up risk. There is none. We don't take any. Oh, the other thing in our structure is we take no land entitlement risk. That's the other reason why legal is so important here, is all permits have to be in place. The Family Dollar lease is executed, and it is ready to go. So we are locked down. Then the only risk we're taking is cap rate risk for 3 months and construction risk where we've got the best in breed people. We also underwrite our developers. These developers to become this size, Family Dollar or any of these type of stores are very seasoned, very strong balance sheets. So the chance of a problem there are also, I think, mitigated by our underwriting. No construction risk, really no development risk. And that's really it, guys. So with that, I'll take any questions. C&L is a big one. And there are some funds that finance, but they do it differently than we do. So I think you look at there are a number of funds that will provide some construction or they want to buy completed products. So they're moving this off. Developers are moving it off to them as soon as they finish construction. Those funds will buy these. They'll package some bonds, slice and dice a bunch of them, and they'll make a scrape on it. I'm not sure that there's anyone out there that is doing it just like we are doing it. To provide to the developers what we're doing and to create the liquidity vehicle. I haven't seen anyone yet that has a vehicle like this on the liquidity side that we've got, that we've structured and we've developed. No, there are more deals. We could have, by the end of 2015, $100 million in pipeline and closing. So we see it as being very easy to grow it to $100 million a year for this model. And that's probably where we're gonna stay at. We'll be very selective on who we're doing business with. We want to be best in breed with the developers, the right tenants, and keep our team pretty close. You know, some of the benefits we can do at $100 million if we're BBB minus or better, right? So we'll have some A, we'll have some others in there. Some of the ideas we floated around is, can we get a shadow rating on this? So now we've moved from outselling this liquidity fund to now we've got a shadow rating on the fund. Does that really help us? We're still kicking that around. How expensive is it going to be to get it? But if we grow this thing over $100 million and we're having that kind of cash flow, you know, it might make some sense. It may give more investors a level of security where there's some investors that say, I can't come in because our corporate governance says any short-term instrument we have has to be BBB minus or better, right? So now maybe a shadow rating allows me to do that. Now maybe I've got a fund that will put $50 million in this because they're sitting on $1 billion worth of cash and they don't know what to do with it while they're waiting for investments. And there's a lot of that cash out there right now. There's a lot of money sitting on the sidelines waiting for something to do. And an 8% yield is pretty good money short term, especially if they can get out of it very quickly and deploy it for whatever their prime business is. Yeah. You know, because of the nature of the company that we have, our first deals were because of our own relationships with people. But now I would say, you know, we're 3-4 years into this. So this is, 2010 is when we started Blackwood. We're probably looking at 50 deals a month. We probably turn down another 20 without even looking at them. And we're very selective. Quite frankly, we're throttling back a little bit. With the Wahlburgers deal, which is consuming a tremendous amount of time, with developer capital, with Theramunics, which we're on the road show right now. We're talking with several funds. You know, it's around the clock. And with the growth of Biostat, like I said, I was on the phone with Great Britain at 4 this morning talking about the Nigerian order. So we're busy.
With Biostat, how quickly do you think you'll be able to make the transition to the off-market or first-time people going into it?
It's a good question. It's on our business plan to start that process in 2015. So in addition to the growth of the business we've been doing, there's several key kind of things we're doing. One is the strategic national stockpiles. So when you have a Katrina, let's say, you've got those strategically centered around the world, around the country. There's billions of dollars of medical equipment in all of those. We want to be in there. In addition to that, our first foray into the consumer market is hemophiliacs and also people that are on blood thinners. This product can stop an arterial bleed in a hemophiliac under a minute without compression. No other product can do it. And then on the blood thinners, it can go ahead. If you've ever seen somebody who's on Coumadin, for instance, if they get a cut, they bleed all day. So we think that can be a prescription product. It's the first way we get into CVS, and then we move it down to the Band-Aids and the other things, the applications that would make sense. Retail on that, $45. We sell to the government at $20, $23. So it's save your life. It's not that expensive. Interestingly enough, thank God for the FDA, right? It takes you $8 billion in 10 years to get a drug out. This product, we've got FDA approval, but we've got it for first responders. We've got, of course, the military can use it however they want. But if this is theory now, right? If you had an arterial bleed, you'd have to call your doctor to get a prescription so you could take it. So we're gonna have another product when we bring it out is going to be the same exact product, by the way, but it says for minor bleeds. Yeah. It's just outside of London. Yeah. So therein lies the time differences. Yeah, there's some, they shouldn't be, but if you were to look on the internet, I'm not sure if you'd find Celix Rapid because it's in such demand, but you'd probably find some of the Celix products. Yeah. Like I said, I have it in all of our vehicles. Friends that I have it in their boats. It's endless if you think about it, who should have this product because it's a real lifesaver. And for $45 retail, it's a bargain. ATS, we expect a sale to one of the major defense companies next year. And so that will be we actually thought it was going to be bought 2 years ago. We're very glad it didn't because the sales are over 100 million this year. Expect it to triple next year. So it's going to be a nice day for our investors and the partners that are in it. So we're real happy about that. But that'll probably end up being a 5-year hold for us, 4 or 5 year holds. We try to look at therapeutics is going to be longer. That's the drug. I guess I didn't touch on that a little bit. If I got a couple minutes, let me just share with you this drug because it's interesting. You talk about FDA. This drug has been shown to cure certain forms of cancer and any fibrotic disease. It has shown remarkable results. So we first started looking at how can we get to market quickly and monetize this asset because we're really a small company, and we have to go outside to bring capital in. So we looked at the canine market. Canines and canines are really the only domesticated animals are the only animals that get some of the same cancers humans get. No other animals get it. So it probably says something about our environment a little bit. Our cats and our dogs are living like we are. We struggled with that the FDA, is minimal activity with the FDA. You get a vet that says, yes, you can start your trials. And the canine cancer business, that's $1 billion a year business. People will do surgery on their dogs and even their cats. It costs them a couple grand, right? $3 grand, $4 grand is not unusual. So that would have put our pricing lower than where we want it, but we still do very, very well on that, and it's $1 billion industry. But when we went to the VCs that are in, and we thought of that as let's go there and then let's leap to humans. And it got a very cold response. One, moving from a price point with animals and doubling or tripling it in the human market was going to be a real problem. And they also thought that the leap from this works well on dogs, it's going to work on you, could be a problem also. It just wasn't sexy enough. And although certain type of cancers it's shown remarkable curing abilities for it, that space is so crowded and it can take you 10, 15 years to get to market. So we started looking, we sort of did a deep dive, looked at the mistakes we made, and went back and said, let's start researching those fibrotic diseases where it's clear that this has had some real benefit. And so we're focusing on systemic scleroderma, which is killer. It's a terminal disease. If you have that type of scleroderma, you're going to die, and your weighted average life is going to be 8.5 years. And the cost to an insurance company to treat that, to try to keep you comfortable for those 8.5 years, and it's a miserable disease to have, is $15,000 a year. So cost of capital for an insurance company, do a net present value on that, it's in the 80s, right? I would assume. That's the way I look at it. We've shown a 90% cure rate on that product, on that disease, and the cost we're going out to market at is $15,000. That's to cure it. Now, systematic scleroderma is an orphan disease, which means we're going to blow through clinical trials. A year from now, we will have, 1 year from today, we will have people in clinical trials. Within 2 years, we will be going to market with the product, and we own the market for 7 years, because today it's an orphan disease. So what happens then? Doctors, that alone brings us to $600 million a year in sales. And by the time we get to year 7, again, this form of scleroderma is very small population in the US and in Europe. It's relatively small, and it's growing at a very small rate. So we're going to really dominate and control that market. In essence, we will have cured most of that disease in those areas. But the big enchilada for us is the other fibrotic diseases like lupus. We know that this will in essence be a cure for lupus or affect lupus in a very significant way. The off-label ability of doctors just to prescribe this for lupus, that kind of revenue starts coming in right away for us. So that's kind of why we went after that deal. That to us is probably as follows. We get through scleroderma. We're well into lupus. Then Abbott Medical is calling. And you better take the call and you better sell. It's worse than the mafia calling you because you don't have the ability to fight them, right? But you know, who it's going to be, you know, we want to make sure it's the right group, nimble group. But at the end of the day, it's a sale to another pharma group. Our leader here, Dr. Thacker, hates big pharma. He doesn't like the model of treating symptoms, not cures. So he's adamant against big pharma. But could there be a merger and we get out at some point with a more creative group? I think that's the play. Because if we ever want to really go into cancer, we're too small to deal with that. Even at $1 billion in sales, it'll chew up everything you own. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah.
I understand you track some of your funds to investors. You provide a fairly short-term, more liquid fund and relatively high funds and relatively high short.
Correct.
But where's your product? So you say you're looking at 50 deals a month. So who's feeding you the price? Is it the developers that already have relationships with?
That's exactly right. Yeah, we don't have a relationship with Family Dollar. It's the
So
developers.
Those Family Dollar says, I want to do another Family Dollar
That's
deal.
right.
And I'm not well capitalized enough to take down all these myself. So they, okay.
Yeah, and we will have a 40% interest. We have a 40% interest in the company. The leader of this company, Carl Francetic, is a 60% owner. He's probably, what was the former head of underwriting for Merrill Lynch for the multifamily side. He was one of my associates at KeyBank. He led our private equity group there. He's got these relations. He was with CNL for a number of years, led this particular area for CNL, and he's got relationships around the country. So we've got, we've got a group in Tennessee, Carolina, group in Florida, we've got a group in California that they're ready to go ahead and feed us those deals. So, could somebody else come into the market? Could cap rates change? Could they get so compressed that it doesn't work? Could banks finally get back to 95% financing and it makes it harder for us? At some point, yes. But between now and then, it's a good business model. And, we're not afraid to say this no longer works. Let's shut it down. Well, we do, I think, a fairly good job on saying, what is the initial capital? What is the probability of that being returned, as well as the return on that capital? And what is the potential life for this deal? And could we merge with somebody else at some point? Sure.
Bob, I'm thinking back to the time when you were at Barnett.
Yeah.
And I get the sense that real estate finance may have changed a little since then. I think back, a typical deal, and tell me if I'm oversimplifying, the typical deal that you'd be dealing with would be, say, for an apartment or a small commercial complex. They bought a first mortgage, maybe a mezz in there eventually, but they'd have a small group, a partnership of equity investors focused just on that project.
Yep.
Really very simple kind of thing. Now I think I'm hearing that the private equity really changes the game. It's
Yeah, it can, and I think it will.
Much more complex.
I think it will continue to be, and which makes it more exciting, by the way. I mean, I remember one of the first real estate deals I did with Barnett, which was one of the, I think at the time was the largest center of its type down there, and it was virtually a triple net lease. I mean, we had Kmart. It was one of the Kmart super centers when Kmart was actually, a real strong credit. We had, I don't know how big it was. I can't remember now. 100,000 feet, and I think we had like 10,000 feet of retail space next to it for a pizza parlor or a dry cleaner or something. And you would have thought I was robbing the bank trying to get this deal done. We had to put 70%. It had to be 30% cash equity to do that deal. Now that was 1991, so we were just coming out of a major problem. The S&Ls had blown up, and so the underwriting was really, really constrained. And underwriting is still really, really constrained, except for multifamily right now. The markets love it. Private equity loves it. There's a lot of money being thrown at multifamily, and cap rates are really being compressed in that market. I think in some markets to a very uncomfortable level, because you've got rental rates now. It's much more expensive to rent than to buy in a lot of markets. And when people get comfortable enough to own again, and that gap is still there, I think you'll see people cycling out of rental and buying, whether it be condo or single family or whatever it may be. But we have a tendency to repeat ourselves again and again and again. So the last debacle wasn't the last. Look for 2028. That's when the next big one's coming. It's every 20 years. We have a short memory. Anything else, friendly? Nothing? No other questions? Must be getting late. Thanks.